There is nothing truly original in photography these days. Right now, it feels as if everything has already been done before. We're no longer looking for new horizons on this planet. We're just reinterpreting existing boundaries. And that's okay. You don't have to be original to be unique. And that's the difference between people who literally just steal my photos and pretend they took it, and people who steal my ideas or my style and work that into something of their own. Are they profiting off my skill and labor, or are they creating something unique and expressive for themselves? Ultimately, it comes down to, why are they doing it? Are they just a parasitic social media account trying to gather up useful idiots so that a year later they can launch a crypto scam? Or are they creative people who are seeking inspiration and direction, not in order to make an exact copy, but to find new tools that could bring them closer to their own creative path? And to what extent are all of us dependent on the artistic paths that other people have forged before us? The problem with the internet is that everyone assumes that it's free. You can read news online for free. You can learn how to fix the plumbing in your kitchen for free. You can research the life cycle of a salamander for free. I grew up before the internet and most stuff was free then too. We had news and comedy on free-to-air TV, and every coffee shop had copies of the weekend newspapers lying around for free. Libraries literally hand out books for free and just expect that you will bring them back later. That's marvelous. When the internet arrived, we all assumed it would be free as well. And mostly it was. My first website was a small collection of photographs that I had taken in Texas, USA. That was in 1991. I am so old. Humans like to share things. We share experiences, we share joy, we share a sunset, and we'd love to share our creative efforts especially. Photography is art. We love to share our art. It is natural that people want to show the world their photos. But things get a little tricky when photography is also your source of income. On the one hand, you want lots of people to see how good your photos are, but on the other hand, you're not intending to give them away for free for them to make money. Putting a photo on a website is not the same as giving permission for someone to copy the photo and sell it elsewhere. And yet, that's exactly what some people try to do. And if you've never had your work stolen before, you may struggle to appreciate just how it makes you feel. There's a feeling of powerlessness underneath all of it. It's not just that you've discovered how utterly awful humans can be, but there is next to nothing you can do about it. Most of the time, the thief is living somewhere else in the world. As a freelance photographer who is struggling to get by anyway, your options to redress the issue are minimal. What's really damaging about these situations is they can push you onto a very defensive path. You might start putting all your effort into looking for ways to prevent theft instead of looking for ways to take more photos. And that's a huge trap for you. Once you realize that people are going to keep stealing your work, you now have a choice to make. How much effort should you direct into locking down your work online versus just letting the entire world see what you do? One path will minimize the enjoyment of your photographs, and the other will maximize the risk of theft. I was asked recently about the merits of adding a watermark to images. A friend of mine had been told that you must watermark everything that goes online to protect yourself. People will steal your work even if it's watermarked. Content-aware brushes in Photoshop can fix most of that stuff really quickly, or maybe they just crop out the section that has the watermark in it. So your choice essentially is to escalate the watermark to make it stronger and louder and larger. You can even dial up the watermark to wallpaper right across the image instead. So now we're at a stage where you've ruined your own photo in order to protect it. And that's the choice. That's the choice you have. The same goes for putting sneaky code on the website that tries to lock people out from saving an image. Ultimately, you end up making the website harder for people to use in this process. And it turns out anyone with a fraction of skill can get around pretty much any HTML, CSS, or JavaScript you're putting in front of the images. Anything you attempt towards preventing people stealing your photos will ultimately cost you a heavy price. Not only do you reduce the ability to share your work, but you're putting all of your effort into something that isn't advancing your career or your creativity. Stopping others from stealing a photo is likely a net negative for you. Sometimes folks use watermarks more as a design feature, so as part of the presentation of an image and part of the artwork. In that sense, a well-placed watermark can look quite nice. I think a lot of wedding photographers use them too when they send out proof sheets to clients. So there are specific uses for watermarks that really do make sense. But for protecting an image, I don't think it adds up at all. Ultimately, you have to decide whether to let the world see your work or whether to lock it all up to keep your images safe. A quick sidetrack here. I actually do give away my photos for free sometimes. Every so often people ask me if they can buy print to hang on their wall at home. I make my money through publications and commercial clients, so I've never really tried to make a living selling prints. I don't have an understanding of that market and how it all works. It's not how I think about photography, and it's just not worth my while to try to price photos as prints to sell. It's not my thing. When someone asks me if they can hang a print on the wall, I usually just let them have it. I send a file to a specific printing service here in Melbourne, and then the customer can pay them directly for the printing and delivery. As I said earlier, humans like to share things, and it brings me joy to think that a total stranger is enjoying one of my photographs in their home. Sometimes I even get emails from people who paint art, and they want permission from me to use one of my photos to do a painting. Seems a little bit funny to me because I wouldn't imagine they actually really need to ask my permission to do that. Somehow this seems totally different to hanging a print of my photo in their home. They're making a new and unique piece of art using their own talent. Why would I object to that? But they ask anyway, and I think it's very kind that they do that, and it's a lovely way to show respect to someone, especially to an artist. In a way, what those painters are doing with a brush is exactly the same thing as what a lot of other photographers are doing with the camera. They see other photographic work and they study what the photographer does, and then they look for a path to follow in their footsteps. They may be replicating a style or an idea, or even traveling to a specific location to replicate the scene. A very large part of my career in photography has been sharing my ideas and inspiration with others through my website, through my workshops, and through my tours, and now through my YouTube channel. I am literally giving away my photographic skills to anyone who wants to learn. I am actively helping people to steal my photos and how I make them. People pay their money to join me on workshops and learn from me, and I have no issues how much or how little of my creative foundation they want to copy. I like helping people to find their creative path. And why would I object if they follow my path for a little while in the process of finding their own? I love it when people get so much out of our workshops. I feel a little differently about people copying the actual workshop, however. And people do copy my tours and workshop designs all the time. They usually do it very badly. I still hate that feeling when I find out someone has lifted my entire workshop and then pretended it was their own idea. I remember one particular influencer in Sydney who not only copied our workshop format, but she picked the exact same dates, even listed at the same price to the dollar. All the while they were trying to portray themselves as a serious mentor for creativity, which is ironic because theft is not creativity. Luckily, this scenario usually goes pretty badly because there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make a workshop happen. Stuff that doesn't appear in the brochure. There are usually very good reasons why we end up doing things a certain way. We've already made a decades of mistake to arrive at that conclusion. It's one of the reasons I don't open up new workshops every year, because I'm very particular about the depth of knowledge I require to deliver something of value. Many of my workshops now have been running for over a decade, and it's hard for me to build something new that can offer a comparable depth of experience to what I'm already doing. I remember one fellow who even booked himself onto one of my tours purely with the intent to copy how I run them. He came across as a nice enough fellow to travel with, kind of a tosser when it came to actual camera advice. And it turns out he knew even less about travel than he did photography. And a few years later, he had tried to copy one of my trips into a remote province in China. And predictably, things had not gone well. Back then, I had already spent nearly a decade in China with my tours, but I could see how things were changing at the time. The pace of change in China was amazing and also a little bit terrifying. So much of what I loved about China was being torn down from one year to the next. People and cultures were being trampled in the rush to modernize. This guy had copied my itinerary through Guizhou province, only to find out the hard way that a handful of my favourite villages no longer existed as you would see them in the brochure. The government was building an elevated highway through this region, and in the process a lot of gorgeous old villages were being flattened and upgraded, and they just weren't the same as they used to be. I could see what was coming. I decided to call it a day for my travels in that part of the world. Sometimes when you just copy other people's work, you are likely to miss much of the foundations that make it work. Unless you understand why an artist creates the way they do, then the copy will only ever be hollow. And there are better ways to move forward. Instead of just stealing people's ideas, why not reach out to them and try to collaborate instead? So much of my career has been pushed forward by simply working with some great people along the way. Collaborating with others has been super rewarding for me, either as the junior or senior member of the team. You'd be amazed just how many people out there will gladly help you if you ask them. And maybe you can bring new inspiration to their creative process too. I think the line at which stealing other people's ideas or images crosses from flattery to bastardry is when someone is profiting from it. I'm very happy for someone to hang my photos on the wall and take personal enjoyment from it, but I would feel differently if they sold that photo to a hotel and hung it on 300 walls. Something about the idea of making money from my effort is especially unsettling. And yet, social media in the year 2024 is rampant with this very problem. Social media itself is making all the money. The real problem with social media are those parasitic accounts that steal content from other sources without being upfront about why they're doing it. You know, the kind of account where there's lots of photos of kittens and sunflowers and maybe some inspirational words, only all the photos have been lifted from somewhere else. Indeed, most of the memes were lifted from somewhere else too. And there's a lot of gullible humans who will share these spammy social media accounts without pausing to ask themselves, what's really taking place? What am I looking at? Who took this photo? Sometimes these curated accounts are just lining up a bunch of useful idiots so that in 12 months' time they can launch their next crypto scam. Or maybe they'll sell the account to click farms in China and Russia when they get to a certain number. Please be suspicious of any social media account that is not sharing their own photographs. Please stop and pause. Take a look at other posts that are on that account. Are they even bothering to write proper captions or just shoving out memes they scraped off Twitter? Do they tag the original photographer? Or maybe sometimes they'll credit the name even though they have zero permission to use the photo and they're not actually linking back to the photographer. They're just dropping a name on it. Please stop and ask yourself, why is this person using stolen photos to steal my attention? Are they genuinely excited about sunflowers? Or are they using social media and stolen artwork to manipulate a gullible audience? I don't like the feeling of someone stealing my hard work, but I especially don't like the feeling of being manipulated. I feel this way about a lot of online photography advice too. It gets a little complicated here. I publish a lot of advice on my website and now on YouTube. Part of the reason for that is because I want people to know about my photo tours and workshops. I'm not hiding that. The other part of the reason is because I generally like sharing my photos and my ideas. And I know most people can't afford to join me on a tour in the Arctic anyway. So here's a way I can share and connect with a wider audience. I started my blogging in 2007 when I wrote a manuscript for a book and it failed to get published. The feedback from 3 really big publishers was the same. My book was half travel and half photography, and they said it would be stronger if it were just one or the other. And they were right. I decided to take my chapters and put them on the web for free. And in the process, I accidentally found a way to help like-minded people to find me and find out about my workshops. The idea is simple enough. If you like the advice I offer on the blog or YouTube, then you might like to join me on a workshop too. It's a good way to match up people with what I can offer. Plus, I get the joy of simply sharing a bunch of photos and ideas that matter to me. But that blog started over a decade ago and the internet has changed a lot. For one thing, I'm here on YouTube because nobody reads the blog anymore. The other thing that changed is that lots of corporations started writing SEO optimized content for their blogs. It no longer was enough to share an idea. Now we had to compete for clicks and attention. All of this feels just a little bit manipulative to me as well. Not only has this flooded the internet with garbage content written for search engines instead of humans, but a lot of it comes from stealing words and pictures from websites like mine. My exact blog content turns up all over the internet on SEO optimized sites. They just steal it. I once wrote a chapter in a book about how nothing we make is truly original, but that doesn't mean we can't make something unique. Everything we do is based on experiences and influences we've grown up with. Sometimes we seek them out explicitly. Sometimes they percolate through the brain over years and years before popping out as a creative moment. In a way, this is exactly what AI systems are doing too. They gather up as much output from talented people as possible and distill all that into something that can be used to steal work from the artists they've already copied. It's kind of funny how a company like Adobe will send in the lawyers if you try to use their software for free, but it's okay for them to use our photographs to train their robots for free. The difference between an AI image and the photographs you take today is that you, the photographer, have something intentional to say with that photo. The photo exists because of you and what you want to say with it. Art and expression always comes back to what you have to say. That is what makes a photograph interesting. It is not the formula for a composition or whether they've applied a 3% sepia treatment instead of a 2.5. It's the reason behind taking the photo that really matters. And that's not something an AI can copy. Or to paraphrase a recent meme on AI generated articles, why would I want to read something that nobody bothered to write? I never mind sharing what I know about photography because I believe that in different hands, these ideas end up generating unique expressions. The outcomes are never the same. We all end up somewhere a little bit different, or even better, sometimes a lot different. And that's because we have different reasons for taking photos in the first place. I watched a few videos recently by a guy called Ted Kutina, an indie filmmaker. He makes the point that most of us exist in a creative ecosystem. Not only should we be leaning on inspiration from people around us, but we can't survive without that wider ecosystem. Ted is coming from an environment of making short films where you collaborate with other people, essentially because you have to. Indie filmmakers have no money. They just have friends. They can't make anything without receiving that support. And in turn, they want to support others. Film is not a solo career. We often think photography can be a solo career, and I think that's a mistake. I think we need to push back on that idea of the solo photographer and embrace communities and teachers and networks around us. There's a lot to be gained by having a look for those connections, especially when we're feeling isolated or feel like we're doing all of this on our own. We need those physical connections and the online connections and the physical connections that begin with online connections. Nothing that I have done in my career that was worthwhile was done alone. Nothing was a solo effort. It probably looks as if this YouTube channel is just me, but that's just the magic of television. My wife Shelley is absolutely the only reason I could even attempt this bullshit. Her support, both inside and outside a recording session, is the foundation of me being able to share this moment with you right now. Then there's the people who join me on tours and workshops and make it possible for me to make a video about blurry photographs of prayer wheels. And my wonderful guides in those countries like Gunnar and Sering and Rinzi, who help me to take a good idea and turn it into an amazing reality. Plus the companies like Panasonic and Sigma who support my photography and let me review cool gear on this channel. And then there's Heritage Expeditions, who are making room for me to innovate some really, really unique workshops in some amazing remote parts of the world. So many connections, some big, some small, some take a little from me, some give a lot to me, but we get nowhere if we ignore those connections. The sum of our connections is bigger than the parts. I steal ideas from people all the time. I borrow from mid-20th century photographers, from recent documentaries, or even paintings at the National Gallery of Victoria. There's nothing really original about anything I do. Not really. But that doesn't mean I can't be unique. What amazes me are the people who copy my work without even trying to make it unique in the process. When I started this career and started getting a little bit good at it, I found myself having to decide between letting the world see my work and hence accepting that people will steal my photos versus trying to keep my work safe from harm, but in the process, making it impossible for anyone to enjoy my photos. I chose to share what I have. I believe that if you release something positive into the world, then good things will flow back your way. It does not mean you won't get screwed over. There are plenty of awful people in this world. You will get screwed over. But don't shut the door to good people as well. Don't lock yourself away and don't lock your photos away. The only useful purpose I have ever found for my existence on this planet is to make beautiful things. So that's what I try to do. You're welcome to copy this idea too. Thank you very much for joining me all the way through this video. I hope you found something useful in that, and I appreciate that you stuck it all the way through. It makes a difference to the algorithm, and I hope you'll find a couple of other videos on this channel to enjoy. Have a great day. Yeah, that's right. You tell them. Yeah, Corellas agree.